Now, as far as tools, I want to show you the value of snap ring pliers, which, as the handles are pressed, the pliers open up instead of close, and what a value they are in removing wheels. Now, I put these back in here quickly only to show how I remove them, and I just use this nut driver fitting, and I place it against the truck, the sheet metal of the truck. And then, because the snap ring pliers won't open up as wide as the truck, and then I just place it in here and press against the side of the sheet metal truck gently, and you'll get the hang of it. It's easier to do if it's lying flat. And just press it, and just keep pressing, and voila, wheel and axle extracted. After extracting each wheel and axle set, I thoroughly cleaned and polished these, including the tips, because I want minimum drag or friction in the journal box. For cars in which the current passes through the axle, I think it's really important to have these clean as well as the journal box as well if current passes through the truck. While we're on the subject of axles, these are considered short axles. They're 1 inch and 1 5/16 inches long. This is a long axle, 1 7/16 inches. If you use this axle with these wheels, for example, on the sheet metal trucks, the 7/16 axle will actually come very close, if not rub against the interior of the journal boxes, putting pressure on them. And I have shown that if you put these on there and use them on something that's designed for a 5/16 axle, and if you press hard enough, you can pop the journal boxes off. And of course, that also means that there's additional friction if the end of the axle is rubbing against the interior of the journal box, specifically the outside of the journal box. So be aware that these axles are not interchangeable. These 7/16 are designed for centered iron side frame trucks. The 5/16 are designed for sheet metal trucks. Prior to installing, I check the gauge on each wheel set. And I use Mr. Barker's rule of just passing a dime to make sure that it clears. This one, for example, could be a little bit more snug. Most of the time, these are quite adjustable by hand. Now it's too snug. And what I have found that is a really good adjustment tool, again, are the snap ring pliers. I just put them in, press against the wheels, and gently open it up and move the wheel back out. Sometimes it beats trying to do that by hand and pulling on the wheels and get a lot of accuracy. So I check them all with Mr. Barker's dime test for gauge. Off camera, I'm going to go in and put several drops of 3-in-1 oil inside of each journal box prior to assembly. And then I'm going to assemble the wheels back into the trucks, which is just a matter of putting one end in. And I found that in putting these back in, it's usually not too difficult to then put pressure on both the sides of the truck in order to drop this in order to drop the axle in. But if it becomes a challenge, use the trick or the technique using the snap ring pliers. One more thing before we leave the snap ring pliers and how to extract wheels and axles, let's take a look at the technique that I have developed and used on centered iron side frame trucks. As you know, the centered iron is attached to the metal superstructure of the truck during the construction process when the centered iron is probably warm or in a liquid molten state. And then it bonds to the metal. It is possible to separate that bond and weaken it. Most of the time, that happens when someone grafts the centered iron side frames on either side, pull them apart, pull them away in an attempt to remove the wheel and axle. And instead of moving, and because it can't stand the stress, it can't move the metal, and you end up popping that bond off, or separating that bond and making it very weak, such that the centered iron side frame either is loose, way too loose, or I've had some that simply will fold out because they're so loose, allowing the wheel to drop out, which is not good during operation. So how do I overcome that? Notice on the far side, and I'm going to focus in, that the truck has, the superstructure metal of the truck has two ribs. And that's what we want to apply pressure against. And in order to do that, I drop coins inside the flange, holds it up, and one on this side, where the coins are touching the ribs on the truck. And then I insert the snap ring pliers and apply pressure near the bottom to push the superstructure of the truck apart and not the centered iron side frames. Now this is easiest done if the car is turned upside down, and preferably inside of a locomotive cradle, a soft cradle that gives you a little firmness to push against. And I've done this many, many times, and it works extremely well. I'm ready now to reassemble the 629 Missouri Pacific stock car. Pins, wheels and axles, chassis, trucks, couplers, body, everything's ready to go. By the way, I returned the luster and the depth of blackness to this body by using a light coat of CRC 226 that's cured at least 24 hours, because then all the any kind of oiliness, if there is any, is usually gone, and it just looks really good. Helps in the preservation moving forward. I'm going to do the reassembly through stepwise slides shown in an upcoming slide presentation. If you have any questions, email me, but this will finish the 629 Missouri Pacific stock car. Thanks again for watching Dave's American Flyer Trains. So long, everyone.